Welcome back to the Midwest Motogirl podcast. I'm your host, Sydney Gard, and today I'm going to dive into how to be prepared for a track day and what to bring to the track. A few weeks back, I published a podcast episode titled Track Day Virgins, and it was kind of like a whole summary synopsis of what you should expect at your first track day. This episode builds off of that theme, but we're talking more about specifically what you need to do to be prepared before the track day, like before you get to the track, and some packing lists and items that will be really helpful for you to have during the track day. So first, let's talk about the preparedness and the preparation before you go. Number one, you need to look over and prepare your bike. You may even want to do this before you sign up for a track day in general to make sure that there are no major hiccups with your motorcycle that are going to prevent you from being able to go out to that track day after you've already signed up. So as you're trying to look over and prepare your bike, you're going to need to make sure you do all of your routine maintenance. So that means make sure you're up to date on your oil change. Make sure that your brakes are in good condition and that they have plenty of life left on the brake pads and that you have fairly fresh brake fluid. For me, I typically flush my brake fluid annually because brake fluid does absorb moisture over time. And as your brake fluid absorbs that moisture, it's going to lower the boiling point and it can make your braking less effective. So that's something that I don't ever want to experience on the track. So I flush the brakes pretty much every year, usually at the beginning of the season, like before I'm going to go and do the first track day. But it's definitely something you should pay attention to. And if you're not familiar with how to do that, take your bike into a dealer, tell them you want to flush the brakes, and it's not very expensive. You can also kind of tell when your brake fluid starts to absorb moisture because it will start to get darker. Brake fluid is like a really kind of like light brown, almost clear color when it's new. And as it absorbs moisture, it's going to get darker and darker and darker. And so if you're looking at your brake reservoir on your motorcycle and you're noticing that it's like a dark brown or maybe even a black color, you've got some moisture in there and it's time to flush your brakes. You're also going to want to make sure that you clean, lubricate, and double check your chain tension before you go to the track. And that's kind of just like some of the basic routine maintenance that you're going to want to do. Like obviously you need to make sure that your motorcycle is in safe working condition, but assuming that you've been riding it on the street, most likely it probably is. So these are just some things that you should want to double check before you go as far as maintenance. You also need to make sure that you know the tech requirements. And at the very bare minimum, that your safety wiring, the radiator cap, your oil filter, and your oil drain plug. Ideally, you would have a lot more parts on your bike safety wired, but most track day organizations are only going to require these three things as the bare minimum before you go out on track. So double check what those tech requirements are, double check what the safety wire requirements are, and make sure that you do those things. And if you don't know how to safety wire, I would highly recommend that you just do a quick Google search. You can probably find a video on it. There's tons of videos out on the internet that are pretty descriptive about how to do safety wire. And overall, it's a really easy thing to learn. Your other option is to get to the track, say the night before the track day, if that's an option. And just ask somebody for help, especially if the parts are already pre-drilled for the safety wire to go through them. Most people that are at a track day are going to have safety wire and safety wire pliers with them, and most of them would be more than happy to show a new rider how to do it. We all want this sport to grow, and the only way that it's going to grow is if we welcome new riders and we help out new riders. So don't be afraid to ask for help if you're at the track, whether it be with safety wire or something else. As far as preparing your bike, you also need to look at your tires. If your tires are 3 years or older, I would recommend replacing them before you go into a track day. Tires tend to get hard over time and they lose grip as they've been heat cycled. So you really want to make sure that you have good tires before you go to the track, especially because you may be riding faster at the track than what you would be riding at the street. You may be farther out on the edge of your tire at the track than what you are on the street. And you don't want your tires to be a reason that you crash. Some of the guys that I race with, they always tell me that tires are cheap insurance. If you have a good set of tires that have good grip on them, and you know that they have good grip, then you don't have to worry about it. The easiest way to check the age of your tire is to look at the date code. So every tire is going to have a date code stamped on the sidewall of it. This is, I believe it's a DOT requirement that manufacturers put that date code on there. But it's a 4-digit number, and a lot of manufacturers will also put like an oval around it, so it can't get confused with like a tire size number or something like that. But again, it's going to be a 4-digit code. That 4-digit code is going to tell you the week and the year that that tire was manufactured. So for example, that code says 3824. That's going to tell you that your tire was manufactured the 38th week of the year 2024. And so if that year on there is past 3 years old, you should really, really consider putting a new set of tires on there, regardless how much tread is left on them, just because they've probably been sitting around. They're harder than what a fresh tire would be, and you don't want to end up with having any issues. Assuming that you don't have a dedicated track bike and that you're taking your street bike, you need to unplug the brake light. And you need to put like masking tape or painter's tape over all the lights and the turn signals. If you have mirrors on your bike, you're also going to need to remove the mirrors or put tape over the glass. These are safety requirements. Most track day organizations are going to require this as part of their tech rules. Most racetracks are also going to require this. And they're safety requirements for a couple of reasons. So if you were to crash, it makes it a lot faster to clean up your lights and your mirrors and your bike, because you aren't going to end up with a whole bunch of plastic and glass like all over the track. That tape is going to hold those plastic pieces together. So maybe there's like a big piece that the track has to pick up and clean up, but you're not just going to have like little shards of glass or plastic all over the place where they have to stop the track and sweep and all of these other things. And you also don't want the person behind you at the track seeing your brake light, which is why you unplug it. Even if you put tape over your taillight, when you press on your brakes or you use your brakes, typically that brake light is going to shine through the tape brighter than what just the taillight would. And you don't want the riders behind you braking based on when you brake. That can become dangerous for you and for the rider behind you, because you may be braking a lot later than what they are braking, and they may not realize that. So it's important to unplug your brake light. And with the mirrors, you don't want to be out on track and seeing the riders behind you in your mirror. You have a commitment to hold your line and be predictable when you're on the track, and the rider behind you has a commitment to pass you safely. So if you're seeing them in your mirror and you're feeling like you need to get out of the way, you're going to become unpredictable most likely. You're probably going to change your line. And when you're changing your lines or you're unpredictable trying to get out of the way, it makes it a lot harder to pass you safely. So then you're putting yourself and the rider that's trying to make a pass in danger. The next thing that you need to do to be prepared for the track, outside of getting your bike ready, you need to try on your gear ahead of time. Like, make sure your gear fits correctly, that it's comfortable for you to get on and off your bike. It's comfortable for you to sit on your bike and ride, and it's comfortable to like shift and work the break-in. I was at a track day in April, and there was a handful of new riders there, and one of the new riders had never tried on his motorcycle boots before. And when I heard that, I was kind of shocked, because I'm just imagining a scenario where you don't try on your boots ahead of time and they don't fit. So either they don't fit where they're too small, so they're hurting your feet all day, or they don't fit and they're too big and it's affecting you shifting and being able to effectively shift from one gear to the other. Like, that's not a situation that you want to be in either. So make sure you try on your gear ahead of time, make sure that it fits correctly. And then have a plan. Like, other than making sure that your bike is prepared, like having a plan for your track day is probably one of the biggest things that you can do to be prepared. When I say have a plan, I mean like figure out what time you need to be at the racetrack to make sure that you have time to unload, get checked in, get your gear on at the bare minimum before it's time to ride. I don't think there's anybody in the world that just thrives on like rushing around. When you're rushing around, you you forget things, you can become complacent, overlook safety things. Like you don't want to be rushing around or stressed out because you think that you're going to be late and you're going to miss the tech period, or you're going to miss the riders meeting or whatever like that. So make sure you figure out what time you need to be there so that you don't have to rush. And part of that is going to be figuring out your travel plans. Like, are you camping at the track? Are you getting a hotel? Are you bringing a trailer and you're going to sleep at the track in your trailer? Whatever you're doing as far as travel plans, make your reservations ahead of time so that you don't have to worry about where you're going to sleep at the last minute. Most racetracks require reservations for electric or RV hookups if you're planning to take a camper or a trailer to camp out of. So you have to make sure that you're making those reservations in advance and talking to the track ahead of time so that they have a spot for you. You should also make a plan on like what you're going to eat. I know that sounds probably really basic and people are like, what do you mean? Obviously, like you're going to eat throughout the day, but I think it's overlooked a lot. I see like a lot of new riders that come to the track and that was the last thing on their radar that they needed to think about or worry about that day. But motorcycle riding, it's a sport, especially when you're track riding or you're racing. So you need to make sure that you're fueling your body throughout the day and that you're staying hydrated, especially during like hotter summer months. So you're going to want to make sure you determine ahead of time if there's food available at the track or if you need to bring your own. For example, I was at a race weekend in Pueblo, Colorado last year. And in the email about the race weekend, the race organization had sent out a notice saying that there was concessions available at the racetrack. And then the concession stand didn't end up opening during our practice day. They opened during the races on Saturday and on Sunday for a short period throughout the day, but they did not open for practice. And so if you had not thought about what you were going to eat and you were just assuming that there was going to be concessions or a place to eat on site, those people probably went really hungry that day. So just make sure you have a plan on what you're going to eat. If you are going to eat at the track, I would double check what hours the concessions are going to be available. At Motorsports Park Hastings, they have like a clubhouse that serves breakfast, lunch, and dinner on a track day. And so you can call the track and verify that the clubhouse is going to be open, that they're going to be serving those meals, things like that. And make sure you go to bed early the night before your track day. Staying up until 2 a.m. and then thinking that you're going to get up in the morning and be like alert and like your best self to go out and ride on the track all day, especially potentially in the heat. To me, that sounds like a recipe for disaster and possibly even crashing. When you are tired from lack of sleep, you're going to fatigue easier when you're on the bike. You may not be thinking straight, and you may end up in a panic situation out on the track that could have been prevented if you were more rested and your mind was more alert. So I think that is pretty much like the main things that you should think about and or do to make sure that you're prepared for the track day. As a recap, like do your bike maintenance, know your tech requirements, get your bike prepared properly, make sure you have good tires, tape up your headlights and tail lights, unplug your brake light, try on your gear ahead of time, get a plan together, and go to bed early. So again, those are the main things that I think you probably need to do and or think about to be prepared for your track day. So now, like, what should you actually bring to a track day? And the first track day of the season, I always do a really bad job about this where I wait until like the day that I'm going to leave to get my things together. And as I'm loading up for the track day, I just keep thinking that I'm forgetting a bunch of things. And so that's where this list comes in and could be really helpful for some people, especially if you are like feeling overwhelmed about the track day, you're rushed, you're hurried, or maybe you just don't know. You've never been to a track day, and so you're not sure exactly what you should pack and you should bring with you. So kind of like the necessities, obviously. Number one, your motorcycle. Like you can't go to a track day without your motorcycle. So that's probably not going to be an issue. You're not going to forget your motorcycle. But your motorcycle key could be forgotten. So that's definitely on the list. Especially if you are just taking your street bike and you don't have a dedicated track bike. Most street bikes still have keys on them. So make sure that you have your motorcycle key, that you know where your motorcycle key is at, whether it's in the ignition or it's in the center console of your vehicle, it's on your key ring. Like, just make sure you know where it's at and you have it before you go to the track. Second most important thing that you need to bring is obviously your riding gear. So make sure you have a helmet. You have both of your gloves. You have both of your boots. I think it's probably really easy to just grab your gear and throw it in the truck really quick and drop something along the way where maybe you get to the track and you end up only having one glove or one boot. And like, that stinks because you can't ride with just one glove. Like, that's going to ruin your entire day. Make sure you have your race suit and make sure you have earplugs. I think that's overlooked a lot, but the wind noise and the exhaust noise of your bike and bikes that could be passing you, that does get loud. And so just one track day, maybe it's not going to affect your hearing, but if you're doing multiple track days, it's going to. So just have earplugs with you. Or if you don't have earplugs, ask somebody at the track. Most people at the track are going to have a pack of them, and they would be more than willing to give you some earplugs. And then bring a back protector or an airbag apparatus that goes in your suit. Some organizations require this as part of your gear. Others do not, but I would highly advise definitely thinking about having and bringing a back protector or an airbag of some kind that goes into your suit. Because if you do run into a situation where you go off track and you crash, that back protector and that airbag are going to do wonders in keeping you safe. Make sure you bring a tire pressure gauge. Tire pressures are super, super important at the track. Part of being able to adjust your tire pressures also means you need to have like a bicycle pump or some other air source so that you can add air to your tires as you need to and adjust your tire pressures accordingly. Even if you aren't running tire warmers, your tire pressures are going to vary throughout the day a little bit, just from the temperature climbing when you go from morning to afternoon. And street tire pressures and track tire pressures are not the same. So you're going to want to make sure that you are able to check your tire pressure and adjust accordingly while you're there. And if you're unsure of what tire pressure you should be running for a track day, just ask somebody. Most track day organizations have instructors or control riders, and all of those are really good people to go and ask about tire pressures. And if they don't know the answer to what tire pressures you should be running, they can point you in the correct direction. Some of those people will have a tire pressure chart. So, for example, I run Bridgestone tires. And last weekend at the track, I was talking to the Bridgestone tire rep. He was able to give me a tire pressure chart that has all the different Bridgestone tires on it and shows you what your street tire pressures should be and what your track tire pressures should be. So one of those people is probably either going to have one of those charts, or they are going to be able to show you how to look it up on the internet to figure out what your tire pressure needs to be. You should bring a cooler. So if the track offers food and you're going to eat lunch at the track, that's fantastic. Like, your food is taken care of, but you are still going to want to bring a cooler and fill that cooler with water or some electrolyte drinks or a combination of both. Especially if you're at a track day during the summer months when it's really hot out. If you're down in Arizona, I don't know if they run track days in the summertime when it's 100 degrees out. Maybe they may only ride when it's 70 or 80 degrees. Where I'm at in Nebraska, we have winter time. So all of our track days are in the heat of the summer. And if you're into June, July, August, it's very possible that you could end up with a 90-degree plus day with the sun out and it's humid, and then you've got all your riding gear on. And so you're going to sweat, you're going to lose a lot of bodily fluids, and you need to be able to replenish those fluids and stay hydrated throughout the day. You're also probably going to want to bring just like a simple toolkit. I'm not saying you should bring every tool in your garage, but it is a good idea to bring some basic tools so that if you have a bike problem, you have some basic necessities so that you can try and fix it and get back out on track, rather than losing out on your money for a whole track day because your bike broke down like the first session. Some common tools that I bring to the track is like a set of wrenches. I bring pliers. I bring screwdrivers, like both Phillips and flathead. I also bring like a set of sockets and a ratchet. For motorcycles, usually the Usually the nuts and the bolts are fairly small. So I bring a 1/4 inch drive ratchet set and a 3/8 inch drive ratchet set, but 3/8 drive would definitely do the trick for you. I also bring Allen sockets and or Allen wrenches. Most motorcycles have a lot of like Allen head bolts on them, so you're going to want some Allen wrenches. And that's kind of like the basic necessities. But if there are things that are specific to your bike that you think you might need, I would definitely throw those in. Like for example, my Daytona 675, when I had it, it had a special socket for the rear axle. And so I would usually throw that in my toolbox in case I ran into an issue where I needed to take the rear wheel off. Thankfully, I never actually needed to use it, but I knew that most people at the track weren't going to have that special socket for me. So I just threw it in there just in case. Obviously, you're going to need to bring fuel so that you can ride all day. So that's going to be a big one. When I first started out, I would fill the tank in my motorcycle full before the track day, and that would pretty much last me the entire day. Back then, I wasn't riding very fast, and I did have like a 4.5-gallon fuel tank. But now I don't rely on that. I know that I'm going to use more than one tank of fuel, especially if I'm racing. So now, however much gas is in my tank, I just don't worry about that. But I have a 5-gallon or 5.5-gallon fuel jug that I bring, or I fill that, and I use that throughout the day to put gas into my motorcycle. And that one 5.5-gallon fuel jug is more than sufficient for a single track day. But on a race weekend or like a full weekend track day where I'm going to ride Saturday and Sunday, then that's where I'm going to bring 2 5-gallon gas cans just to make sure that I have plenty of fuel throughout the weekend. Actually, this past weekend with Arma, I only brought one 5.5-gallon fuel jug, and it was full, but I actually ended up running out of fuel on Saturday afternoon, and I had to steal some from the guy that I was pitted with. And so I was thankful that he was willing to share his gas with me rather than me having to leave in the middle of the day and go get gas. But just make sure that you have enough gas to get you through the day and or the weekend. Bring a chair. Like, maybe that sounds silly, but like you're definitely going to want some sort of like lawn chair or place to sit down. You're only going to be on track for part of the day. And then you're going to be off track while the other groups are out riding. So you are going to want a chair so that you can sit down throughout the day when you're not riding. I've seen people forget a chair and then they're sitting like in their car throughout the day. And it works, but you kind of miss out on some of the track day experience when you're doing that. If you're sitting in your car, most people aren't just going to come up and talk to you because they're going to assume that you're like charging your phone, you're looking at the internet, or something else. But if you have a chair, you can sit down, but you can also be out in the open where people can come and talk to you and you can kind of be sociable. So those are just kind of like the basic necessities, but there are some other items that you may want to think about bringing, especially depending on the weather and depending on if you're going to be camping at the track or not. So a generator is not a necessity, but it can be very, very convenient depending on which track you're riding at. If you are not using tire warmers on your bike, you may not need electricity at all, so then you don't have to worry about it. But if you are using tire warmers or you want to run a fan or you're going to stay overnight and it's going to get cold overnight, you may want a space heater or something like that. And so that's where you're going to need to figure out what you're going to do for electricity. So that kind of goes back to having a plan. But depending on the track, some of the electric hookups are far away or they may be limited altogether. And that's where a generator is going to come in. So if you think that you'll need electricity, but you don't have a generator, just make sure you call the track ahead of time to figure out what the electric hookup situation is. And depending on what the track tells you, then you may want to buy or borrow a generator before you go if it's necessary. Pop-up tent. A pop-up tent is pretty much always in my trailer. Again, it's not a necessity, but it's fantastic. I use that at almost every event because it provides shade throughout the day. Now, if you are going to bring a pop-up tent so that you can have some shade, make sure you pack some heavy items and some straps or rope so that you can weigh it down throughout the day. Nobody at the track wants you to put up a pop-up tent and not tie it down because when the wind blows, your pop-up tent's going to blow away, and nobody wants that tent hitting their bike, hitting their trailer, hitting their RV, their pickup truck, anything like that. So just if you do have the pop-up tent and you go that route, just make sure that you have something that you can tie it down with. And if you're going to camp at the track, you're also going to want to make sure that you bring your camping supplies. So a tent, an air mattress for your trailer, sleeping bag or blankets, pillows, etc. Like your basic kind of camping supplies so that you can get a good night's sleep. And depending on your food plan for the day, you may want to bring a grill. I have a tabletop Blackstone griddle. It just stays in my trailer all the time. And I have used that thing so many times when I'm at the track. I use it to cook breakfast. I usually cook dinner on it. A lot of times my dinner from Friday night ends up being my lunch for Saturday, and that griddle is fantastic. So again, depending on what your food plan is, you may want a grill or a griddle of some kind so that you can cook on. And then a folding table is going to be really helpful to you. It's not a necessity, but it's really handy to have around, especially if you are going to be like grilling. If you have like a tabletop grill, I need a table to put my griddle on, but it's also just really nice to like set your tools on, set your helmet or your gear on throughout the day, set your drink on. Spare parts. If you're racing, it's highly advisable that you have some spare parts, but if you're just doing a track day, it may not be completely necessary, but if you were to crash and break something that's basic, like a clutch lever or a shift lever, it could salvage the rest of your track day versus you saying, oh, I broke my brake lever, I can't ride anymore, now I have to pack up and go home. If you have some spare parts and like some basic things, you can potentially replace that and be able to get back out on track later in the day. And again, like levers, like brake and clutch lever, your shift pedal, things like that. They're all relatively inexpensive items to get and to have as spares to bring to the track. I have a whole milk crate of spare parts in my trailer. And some of that is because I'm racing now and I'm traveling to different tracks. And if I'm, say, 8 hours away at a different track and something breaks or I crash, I don't want it to ruin my entire weekend. But I also run a different kind of rear set on my bike than what a lot of the other guys that I race with run. One of them made a comment to me last year about like, hey, in the off season, you should try and find some cheap Woodcraft rear sets because then we all have spares if you crash, or you need to buy spare parts for your Vortex stuff. And so that's what I did. I did not find any cheap Woodcraft rear sets, but I was fortunate enough to be able to purchase some spare parts from Vortex. So like if I crash, I have a spare brake pedal. I have a spare shift pedal. I have some of the little nuts and bolts and like things like that are going to go along with those brake pedals. I take extra sprockets and I run 2 sets of wheels. And depending on which track I'm at, I run different sprocket sizes. So I just keep a whole set of extra sprockets in my trailer. And I do run an O-ring chain on my bike, and it's a 520 O-ring chain. So it's not super common that I would throw a chain, but if my chain is too loose, it is possible that it could throw it off the sprocket, and then I would have to replace a chain. So I have a spare chain in my race trailer. On my vintage motorcycle, I take spare fuel filters, I take spare fuel line, I have like a spare battery for it, just like some little things like that. And having those things, hopefully you never need them, but in the event that you do need it, it will make a world of difference to you for your track day. I would also recommend bringing like shower supplies and toiletries. And that sounds kind of weird, but most racetracks are going to have like shower facilities. And whether you're going home at the end of the day or you're camping at the track, it's really, really nice to be able to go and take a shower and put on some clean clothes at the end of the day after you've been sweating and you've had all your gear on and things like that. So if you are going to shower at the track or you think that you might want to shower at the track, I would recommend bringing for sure a towel, some shower shoes, and then obviously like your soaps and shampoos. And the reason I say like bring shower shoes, most racetracks that I have been to, the shower facilities are pretty clean, but on occasion you do get one that does not have super clean showers, and to me it just kind of like grosses me out to have my feet on like a bare concrete floor in the shower, or like, I don't know, or like think about having my feet in like a public shower. I'm not sure why that grosses me out, but shower shoes are a must for me if I'm going to be showering at the track. And then you may also want to think about bringing like a fan or a space heater. And so these are going to play into your electricity plan. But during the warmer months, you might want a fan to help cool you down, cool your bike down, or some people like even use them to dry out the inside of their helmet between track sessions because they don't like the feeling of like putting on a sweaty helmet, which I totally get. If you're going to be camping at the racetrack, sometimes the temperatures will drop overnight, and you may want to have a space heater to keep you warm. Again, that goes back into having a plan where you've looked at the weather and you're prepared for the track day and you've figured out your electricity. But those are things that are kind of nice to have. So I think that I covered most of the basics and some of the nice to haves when you're going to the racetrack. It's possible that I forgot something, and if I did, I apologize. But if you have all the things that I just talked about, like, you're going to be really prepared and really set up regardless of if I did forget something or not. It's very likely that anything that I did forget, the guy or girl pitted next to you probably has it. So just go and ask them. Again, like I said, if you are feeling unprepared or you forgot something, you need help with something, throughout a track day, like, legitimately just go and ask somebody. I know that it can be kind of scary or feel uncomfortable to go and talk to strangers, but everybody at the track is usually pretty nice. They're pretty much always really helpful, and we all want to see the sport grow, so we want to see new people coming to the track. And if a new person is coming to the track and they need help, and giving them help is what makes their day and makes them come back again, like, that's what we're going to do. Thanks for joining me on today's podcast. I hope that this helps you and makes you feel more prepared for your first track day. Maybe it's helping you and making you feel prepared for an upcoming race weekend. Or maybe it's just kind of giving you an idea of some of the things that you need to do before you consider doing a track day. If you are enjoying this episode, or if you're just enjoying the podcast in general, feel free to hit that follow button. Once you do that, that will give you updates whenever there is a new episode posted. And you can also follow me on social media. My Instagram is midwest.motogirl, just like the name of the podcast. Or you can find my racing page on Facebook. It is Sydney Gard Racing. Sydney is spelled Sydney. So again, that's Sydney Gard Racing on Facebook. Thank you for joining me. We will talk to you guys soon.